All right, Sunday morning, have a 49ers update for you. How will they punish De'Vondre Campbell? This is something that I talked about a couple days ago, and it now does appear that the 49ers are leaning toward the suspension option. You can either cut him, but that would expose him to waivers, and even if he clears waivers, it would mean that he could sign with another team, or you could suspend him, conduct detrimental to the team. He still wouldn't suit up for you, probably wouldn't even be allowed around the building, but he couldn't sign with other teams in that scenario. And you can potentially recoup some signing bonus money for De'Vondre Campbell. So let's look at some of the money that De'Vondre Campbell has certainly lost out on, and some more of the money that he can lose out on, potentially, depending on a lot of the legal machinations that are going to happen from this point forward after he quit on the 49ers during their Thursday night loss to the Rams. His contract with San Francisco featured a $1.21 million base salary. They pay out the base salary by week, so that's breaks down to $67,222 per week. There are 3 weeks to go. So at least $201,667 can be recouped by the 49ers. This was a guaranteed salary, but if you refuse to play, you're not guaranteed to get the salary. Now, it remains to be seen if the 49ers can get De'Vondre Campbell's game check for Thursday back. If the CBA allows them to, and again, some of this could turn into a legal fight, but that would be $67,000 in addition to the $201,000 that they can definitely recoup. But he refused to play, which I think is a breach of contract. So they would have some standing to get an additional $67,000 back. The signing bonus is what's really interesting. And if the 49ers do suspend De'Vondre Campbell, they can go back and they can argue that part of this signing bonus needs to be repaid to them. So it's $3.35 million total. That was deposited into De'Vondre Campbell's bank account when he signed with the 49ers back in March. But again, if they suspend him instead of release him, a portion of this can potentially be recouped by the 49ers. Then there's the per game active bonus. Every single game during which De'Vondre Campbell has been on the active 50 or active 46 plus 2-man roster, so a 48-man roster now with the rules that were instituted a couple years ago, he has stood to make an extra $20,000. So 3 games are remaining, $60,000 can be recouped. Is it possible for the 49ers to recoup an additional $20,000 for the game during which De'Vondre Campbell refused to play? Theoretically, maybe. That I'm not sure about, but we'll see what the final total ends up being. And then there are the playing time incentives. Check these out. This is where De'Vondre Campbell really, really shot himself in the foot. The contract stipulated that if he played 60% of the 49ers snaps over the course of this entire season, he'd earn an extra $250,000. If he played 70% of the team snaps over the course of this 2024 season, he'd earn another $500,000. Obviously, the 49ers weren't going to win an NFC championship game. You could have never said never before the game against the Rams. Now you could say never, but that would have been $750,000, 70% plus a Super Bowl appearance. So that would have been quite a bit of a incentive money for De'Vondre Campbell. But just strike this one out. Look at the 70%. He was in line to make $500,000 on top of the initial deal. The $250,000 all but sealed up. I don't think that the 49ers could get out of that because he's already played what will amount to 60% of the snaps on the season. But the 70% number is interesting, the $500,000 number, because Campbell currently is at 83% of snaps played. He was over 90% of snaps played on the season before the Thursday night game. He refused to come in during the second half, so that number dwindled to 83%. And without playing over the course of the last 3 games, that number will certainly dwindle under 70%. It should stay above 60%, but it should dwindle under 70% which will disqualify De'Vondre Campbell from the $500,000 incentive. Now, we won't know the exact math until the games are played and we know what the exact defensive snap count is for the 49ers. But what I find extremely ironic is that there is at least a chance that if De'Vondre Campbell had not refused to play, it would give him enough snaps to maybe stay above the 70% threshold. Now I think he won't stay above that 70% threshold. So that is $500,000 down the drain for De'Vondre Campbell through just that incentive. So total, again, you look at base salary, 49ers can recoup $200,000 plus. We'll see how much of the signing bonus they can recoup. $60,000 at least can be recouped out of the per game active bonus. And $500,000 that Campbell was likely to earn is gone through the playing time incentive. So when you look at total salary cap impact for the 49ers, at least $750,000 will be saved by them, and probably more with the signing bonus through this suspension that they can try to recoup. I can say this: every dollar on the salary cap matters for the 49ers. This is a team that, and I think every single team should do this. I think the 49ers have probably stretched this better than anyone. But when they sign guys to one-year deals, the minimum type of deals, not the type of deal that De'Vondre Campbell was on, but minimum deals for the 49ers, they look for veteran salary exceptions at every single juncture they can get. And what that means is they'll sign a veteran to the minimum at what, $1.2 million or whatever it is for how many accrued years he has. But if you can fit him under the exception, you pay him the cap hit of a second-year player, which is more like $800,000. And so you save $300,000 to $400,000 through a contract just like that. And those can add up over the course of time, right? Those can add up to a couple $1 million. And the salary cap is like a sink. There's water flowing into a sink. And there are multiple sinks because there's every single season's salary cap. So you go 2024, this is the cap situation in 2024. 49ers currently have $49.68 million. You move over into 2025, I currently have them at $23.3 million. But there's going to be carryover from the 2024 sink to the 2025 sink for the 49ers. Whatever you don't use in 2024, which projects to be about $49 million, is going to carry over into 2025. The goal of salary cap management is that, you have these sinks with pipes connecting them, and one sink drains into the next. Water is going to be pouring into these sinks because you're going to be paying players, you're going to have expenditures. The goal is to never let an individual sink overflow, because if a sink overflows, that's when you have to start cutting guys. That's when you have no choice but to make moves that you might not want to make just to be salary cap compliant. So it is a delicate process of letting all water out of one sink, pouring it into the next one, not pouring too much expenditure water into any particular sink so that it stays under the salary cap. The teams that have overflowed, where the water has reached above the level of containment in any given sink, are the ones that have entered salary cap hell. The 49ers of the late 1990s are an example. The Rams lately are an example. The New Orleans Saints. I mean, all these teams have had to part ways with players that they wouldn't have otherwise parted ways with, and that hurts your team building process. So there are ways to obviously manipulate the situation, but at the end of the day, the sink level is the sink level, and sometimes if there's too much water pouring in, it's going to overflow, which is why the 49ers have taken care to make every single contract that they sign as efficient as possible. So when we talk about this De'Vondre Campbell situation, every dollar matters. And that's why I break it down for you like this. If we can add this up to potentially over $1 million if they recoup a healthy part of that signing bonus, that can end up mattering for the 49ers in the bigger picture of the salary cap. But what I would say about De'Vondre Campbell is that this is also a matter of principle. You have to set precedent in the building. If a guy just decides to walk off after refusing to play, well, you have to make sure that that is not going to be culturally indicative of the program on a larger level. So that's why the 49ers have to figure out the harshest possible thing to do to De'Vondre Campbell. This is unacceptable in the game of football. It's unacceptable for a proud locker room. This is a 49ers player. This is a 49ers team that featured a player bounce back from getting shot in the chest, featured a player like Charvarius Ward playing not long after his 1-year-old daughter, Amani Joy, passed away. It's a 49ers team that saw Dre Greenlaw recover and hit the field again 305 days after tearing his Achilles, and he looked just as explosive as before. It's a testament to how hard he worked to come back. It's a team that featured a star running back in Christian McCaffrey fly to Germany just to investigate ways in which he could return to the field for his teammates quicker. It's a team that saw Talanoa Hufanga playing with a club on his hand after recovering from a torn ACL. He tore his wrist ligament. I mean, the 49ers as a whole, especially if you look at the players that had been inside this program for quite some time, this was this and still is a team that fights like hell. Gritty, scrappy team that would really, really be rightfully offended if their toughness was questioned. So when De'Vondre Campbell stepped into this locker room back in March and then pulled what he did on Thursday night, the 49ers took severe exception to it. That's why you saw some of the, extremely, extremely aggressive quotes. You don't normally see this from professional athlete about another professional athlete, but it was the George Kittle one that I think stood out most to people. It's one person who just decided not to play for his teammates. It's more of one person, as Mooney said, making a selfish decision. And I'm with Ward on that. I've never been around anybody that's ever done that, and I hope I'm never around anybody that does that again. I don't like distractions on the sideline. I think that's ignorant, and I think it's dumb. It's just stupid. It's very immature. I just don't see how you could do something like that to your team. Or Charvarius Ward, he's a professional. He's been playing a long time. If he didn't want to play, he shouldn't have dressed out. He could have told them before the game. So I feel that was some selfish shit that he did. It definitely hurt the team because D. Winters went down and we needed a linebacker. So for him to do that, that's some sucker stuff to me, in my opinion. He's probably going to get cut soon. Well, a suspension in effect is the same for the 49ers locker room, but for De'Vondre Campbell, it is actually harsher than if the 49ers cut him for all the reasons that I just outlined. But the matter of principle is so important. You heard what the 49ers players said. I thought it was so important for both Kittle and Charvarius Ward to eloquently and harshly come out and denounce this. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan denounced it as well, because you've built a culture in this building since 2017 that's been one of the most impressive cultures in the NFL. It's why the 49ers, a huge reason why they've seen so much success. So you can't have one player, a free agent, a mercenary type player, come in and derail that culture with an act like the one that we saw on Thursday. The retribution has to be quick, and it has to be as harsh as it possibly can be from the 49ers. We saw the retribution through the press conferences, distancing themselves from Campbell's behavior, saying that's not how this team operates. And now when the 49ers figure out what to do from the semantic side, well, you say, what's harsher, a suspension or a release? And I think a suspension is. Now, there's also an optical side of this. If the 49ers were to release De'Vondre Campbell, he could theoretically join another team. And look at the Detroit Lions. Aren't they down like 4 linebackers? They're down an obscene amount of defensive players. It wouldn't look good at all for the 49ers if De'Vondre Campbell signed with a team like the Lions and then was a model citizen on the way to a Super Bowl. So just avoid the possibility of anything like that happening. That's what the 49ers are saying. You suspend the guy. He can't sign elsewhere. He has to just sit there and rot, really, technically on the 49ers, under their contractual control, not on their active roster. And if you're San Francisco, I think that you've made the most out of a really, really bad situation. And ultimately, because a suspension, according to the collective bargaining agreement, can lead the 49ers to looking to recoup some of that signing bonus money, I think this is what is financially best for them because, again, every single dollar on the cap matters. The 49ers are about to enter a fascinating offseason. Yesterday, I did the entire 49ers roster look, which gave us a nice color-coded overview of how they're going to have to approach this offseason. Every player that is shaded in green is already under contract for 2025. Blue, exclusive rights free agents, whom the 49ers can easily bring back. And then Jordan Mason and Curtis Robinson are both restricted free agents. So that might be a little bit tougher to bring them back. But the 49ers still do control their destiny in those situations. Anyway, you've got to find a way to build a competent roster, not only along the front line where the 49ers already have most players signed, but also in the depth positions. And given the salary cap situation, in 2025, the 49ers have $23.3 million, but they're going to carry over the unused space from this year. But you have $23.3 million of space with only 33 players under contract and Brock Purdy still on his old deal. And we know that Brock Purdy is going to get a new deal. In order to surf the wave of the rising salary cap successfully, as the 49ers have done over the past several seasons, you're going to have to be very prudent with your money. Every dollar on the cap matters for the 49ers. I'm not saying that the suspension for De'Vondre Campbell here over a release is something that is coming with the salary cap as the absolute number one priority for the 49ers. No, the number one priority is the matter of principle here. And the number one priority is handling this in a way that you dissuade it from happening again. You're setting a cultural standard for the football team with how you handle this. But when there also is a financial benefit to all of this, when you can also potentially recoup some of the signing bonus money in a situation where every dollar matters, of course, you're going to work in that direction if you are the 49ers. Yesterday, the final roster rebuild overview, by the way, we were able to find a color for De'Vondre Campbell. We shaded him here in red, and Mike suggested asterisk retired. We could have put deserter, but we put retired. But he did desert the 49ers on Thursday against the Rams. So anyway, go ahead and check out that video if you have more specific roster questions. I wanted to give you the very first overview of what this offseason will look like for San Francisco. And we start by looking at who's already under contract. And just because somebody's under contract doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be with the football team in 2025. But it is the starting point for any team building discussion. And that is where we began our talk yesterday. It looks like somebody just hopped on. An anonymous goose, as you can see in the upper right, hopped onto the YouTube, hopped onto the, not the YouTube page, onto the Google Sheet to take a look at the roster. So you can do that as well. Anonymous goose, welcome. I'll put the link into the chat section here on YouTube for all of you. Happy Sunday morning to everybody. Our Christmas party here went very well. We hosted one, Lombardi herself and I. Lombardi herself is still sleeping. Going to have to go check up on that in a second. It was a late night, so I had to wake up and give you guys some of this De'Vondre Campbell news before the football game started today. So that's the update on what San Francisco is likely to do with De'Vondre Campbell. Why don't we take a look at some of the games? I'll be running some NFL updates today. The month of January is going to be interesting because we'll be running a lot of NFL updates with the 49ers, obviously not in the playoffs. So we'll be doing that from whatever studio we're based at, either in California or in Nashville after every single game. But today, early window, Chiefs and the Browns. The Chiefs are one of the 4 teams in the NFL that hasn't scored over 30 points this year, and the other teams that haven't scored over 30 are all terrible. But Kansas City, 10 straight one possession wins. Somehow, some way, they are 12-1. I do think they are on their way to a playoff exit, though, given the fact that they just have not been overpowering this season. Bengals and Titans, that's actually here in Nashville where I'm at for the weekend. Bengals are favored significantly, 5.5 points. Worst defense in the league, or one of the worst in the league, but Joe Burrow has been playing really good football. Commanders and Saints, Washington favored in New Orleans. Ravens and Giants, boy, these are not great games, are they? The first 4 that I've listed. The 5th one doesn't get any better. Cowboys and Panthers. 6th one doesn't get any better. Jets and Jags. All right, now we finally have a decent game. The Dolphins and the Texans. That's the only game in the early window that might be worth watching. Although Jameis Winston against the Chiefs could be semi-interesting. But Dolphins, Texans, 49ers play Miami next week, so you can get an early look at Mike McDaniel's Dolphins ahead of that game. It's really the 49ers former coordinators bowl, right? It's Mike McDaniel against DeMeco Ryans in Houston. The 6-7 Dolphins trying to fight their way back into contention. The Texans already in it at 8-5. Moving to the afternoon window, Colts and Broncos. Semi-interesting, given the way that Bo Nix is playing well. They're 8-5. Then the Bills and the Lions. That gets good. All right. So I'm really excited for the Bills and the Lions in the afternoon window. Steelers and Eagles is happening at the same time as Bills and Lions. So we're going to have a bonanza there. All at once. Bills, Lions, Steelers, Eagles, CBS, and Fox competing. Buffalo and Detroit on CBS. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. So the Battle of Pennsylvania there is going to be on Fox. Patriots, Cardinals, nobody cares. Buccaneers, Chargers, semi-interesting. Baker Mayfield against Jim Harbaugh. And then Sunday Night Football, very interesting. Packers against the Seahawks. We have a Monday night doubleheader tomorrow. It's going to be Chicago against Minnesota, while Atlanta plays the Raiders. Nobody but delusional Raiders fans cares about Atlanta, Las Vegas. I mean, even Falcons fans, man, that's just such a mundane team. No pass rush. Kirk Cousins at quarterback. That's tough. Bears, Vikings. Well, I like watching the Vikings play. It's fun watching Sam Darnold tear it up this year, but the Bears, that's not a very watchable team either. So we have a fun afternoon on tap. I hope that everybody is able to enjoy it. Don't stress too much about the 49ers if you're a 49ers fan. You've always got 2025. That's how professional sports work. I think people just in general need to be a lot more pragmatic about things. I mean, the 49ers played 60 games over 3 years. Kyle Shanahan came in without his fastball this year. The league is keyed in on Kyle Shanahan. He needs some time to step back, self-evaluate, take a deep breath, and attack this from a fresh perspective. The 49ers players need to, some of these veterans with the high mileage over the past few years, they need to step back and reattack 2025 fresh. I think it's going to be extremely exciting to see Christian McCaffrey and Isaac Guerrero both healthy together on that field with whoever else the 49ers have at running back. Brock Purdy could even use a little bit of a cleanse, right? A little bit of take a deep breath, get back into 2025. 49ers were an emotionally taxed team this year. They were good enough to stay afloat until December. As I said early in the season, I said this is like an NBA team. They can manage this season from an injury perspective. Like Christian McCaffrey, they can say, take your time. We'll still be in contention when you come back. And they still were. Everything we said about the 49ers was true. They just weren't able to overcome a growing pile of adversity. And that's sometimes how it works in professional sports. So that's why it's so important for them to lay the foundation for 2025. First major challenge as far as doing that was making sure you handle this De'Vondre Campbell situation correctly. So they plan to suspend him, not release him. And I have to say that a suspension is harsher than a release in this situation. Then they can also save maybe even upwards of $1 million on the salary cap. So everybody enjoy the games today. And I have to tell you that today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you're thinking about giving therapy a try, you can contact BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find comfort this September or this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Lombardi Lounge today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Lombardi Lounge. All right, everybody enjoy the games today. Well, I'll check in with you periodically, so hit that notification button, hit the subscribe button, and we will talk to everyone soon.